History repeated itself for George Shepherd as he stood on the Congupna Road siding. 37 years ago, he had arrived here himself, a young fellow in a new country. Now an established orchardist, he had sponsored Fred Barton as an immigrant to Australia.
You know, Fred, I told him as we walked away from the station, you've come to one of the richest valleys in Australia. Not that it looks much like a valley around here and now, but the Goulburn River runs right through these plains. Actually, you've come at the wrong time of the year to see the country that's best. It's winter here now, you know, although you mightn't think so compared to the old country.
I can't quite get used to that. It seems queer leaving the old country in the summer, and when you get out here, the next season's spring again. I won't have any autumn at all this year.
Don't worry. You'll soon get used to it. Before you know it, you'll be a fair dinkum Aussie like the rest of us.
How long have you been out here, Mr. Shepherd?
Since 1912, Fred. And it was just as flat then as it is today, but more scrub and bushland. The valley was mostly grazing country in the early days. They tell me that about 1890 they started irrigating, and as the channel spread out from the river, more orchards were planted. By 1912, orchards were coming more to the forefront. There's still a lot of dairying done on the other side of the river, but over here it's mostly fruit. Over near Marupna, we stopped and I took young Fred over to meet Roy Roberts. Most of the orchards in this particular area were started about the same time. Roy and I are neighbors, kicked off together almost on the same day. Look at those trees. Looking at them today, it's hard to realize the effort and time that's gone into developing these orchards to the stage they are now. Some of us worked in the local dairies, earning money to pay off our land and waiting for our trees to bear. We made mistakes. Some planted the wrong type of trees, others adopted wrong methods of orcharding. And we had enemies. Hail and wind, storm, frost, flies, bugs, moths. There were times when there seemed to be no end of trouble. We learned the hard way, I guess, but we did have water. The State Rivers and Water Supply Commission had put in dams and reservoirs and irrigated 100,000 acres of the Goulburn Valley. Since then, the government's been a great help to the industry. Their engineers had put in our water. We got finance to help us establish our own canneries, and their horticulturists gave us advice on growing techniques. The State Electricity Commission took over power supplies in 1926, and in 10 years, most of us had electric power. The women folks soon had their electric irons and water jugs, and we installed electric spray pumps and graders in the shed.
We said cheerio to Mr. Roberts and continued on our way. Mr. Shepherd told me more about the trees they grow.
Those trees you saw at Roy's place just now were mostly peach or apricot. We've got some peaches on our property, too, but mostly we grow pears. There's really not much difference in the growing of them. You still have to prune them and spray them and pick the fruit, whatever type you grow.
When we reached the house, Mrs. Shepherd and their daughter Margaret were waiting on the veranda for us. Mr. Shepherd introduced me, and his wife made me feel right at home by suggesting a cup of tea. It wasn't long before they had me working in the orchard. Mr. Shepherd has about 4,000 trees on his property, and after my first day's pruning, I thought I'd never get the cramp out of my arm. It didn't take long for me to realize that you don't sit down through the winter and wait for the fruit to grow on the trees, but I enjoyed every bit of it. It sort of made me feel good when I thought that some of the fruit that had grown on these trees would be going home to the old country.
Fred had been with us for a few weeks. He had a bit of a break from all the hard work. I took him up to Shepparton, meet a few people, and show him round. Shepparton's the centre of the main fruit-growing area in the valley. We thought it'd be a surprise for Fred. After all, the only city he'd seen so far was Melbourne.
We hardly had time to get out of the car before meeting a group of chaps. Norm Fairless, the president of the local Fruit Growers Association, came over and Margaret introduced me. He took me over to meet the other fellows. There was Ray West, the town clerk, and another orchardist by the name of Pither, and Harry Luck, who's secretary of the Food Preservers Union at the local cannery. It seems they were talking about the community playing field the people of Shepperton are building. The town clerk told me they had a civic centre scheme going too.
We had a lot to do, and as we went off down the street, I showed Fred some of our modern buildings.
I never imagined Australia would be anything like this. Country cities with thousands of people. Even the footpaths are 20 feet wide.
Later on, we did some business for Dad at the cannery. Mr. Phelps came out with us, talking as usual about the industry.
Yes, Fred. This cannery was started back in 1918. It wasn't as big as this then, of course, but we seem to add a bit every few years. Bigger overseas markets now, you know, and more people growing fruit.
I know that. I remember seeing posters in England about Australian canned fruit, and I remember how keen all of us were to get them.
Some of them, Fred, may very well have come from this cannery. Last year, Australia exported nearly 2.5 million cases of canned fruit. Most of it went to Britain and other parts of the British Empire. Our effort's only a part of this. In Queensland, 2,000 miles away, they're picking and canning pineapples. Up there, they pick and can in summer and winter, 2 crops a year. Throughout Australia, the story's been the same. Early struggles, pioneering, battles of the elements. Later, this was followed by technical and scientific advances designed to make the industry the profitable and efficient organization it is today. During the picking season, thousands of workers follow the ripening crop, working together, gathering in the harvest when the fruit is at its best. Pineapples from Queensland, apricots, peaches and pears from New South Wales and Victoria, cherries, pears, apricots and plums from the south of Australia, and berry fruits and apples from Tasmania. Fruit from these orchards goes to fill cans which will be sold in every corner of the world. We're very particular, too, what type of fruit goes into the can. Only the very best is accepted from the orchards. The introduction of high-speed peach pitters and pear peelers has revolutionized production methods. Each machine handles as much as 5 tons of fruit a day. Enough fruit for 6,000 cans. Pressure cooking, now being installed in canneries throughout the country, will speed up factory processes still further. At every stage of production, government inspectors check the quality of the raw fruit and the finished product. High standards in size and color are imperative. Canned fruits produced here in Australia compare grade for grade with any other canned fruits produced in the world. And none may be exported unless the contents conform to high standards laid down by the government. And only then if the label gives a true description of the contents.
This is the land which grows Australian fruit. From the plantations of the north and the orchards of the south, 1 million trees bear fruit for Australian canneries. In their determination to produce the best quality fruit for canning purposes, the fruit growers of Australia have a highly developed cooperative spirit. Working together, they solve their fruit marketing problems, and in consultation with government horticulturalists, improved methods of pest control and scientific farming are being developed. Men like George Shepherd are proud of their achievements. They believe that the new irrigation schemes and power developments will open up the land for further expansion. Each year there are 22 million more people to feed. Each year in Australia, in the canned fruits industry, there are 100,000 pairs of hands working for the world.